Good afternoon. Welcome. My name is Shelley Meharry. I'm President and CEO of the Community Foundation of Johnson County. I want to extend a personal thank you to all of you for sharing your evening with us now for an important conversation. We are honored to welcome you to our discussion that's focusing on immigrant and refugee support this evening. While this topic is very relevant and timely at this moment in time, this conversation has actually been planned since early fall, and it's coming as part of a series of community conversations that we've been holding over the past 12 months. We've been having discussions about mental health, childcare, affordable housing, and now immigrant and refugee support, with the hope of bringing our community members closer to the issues that are impacting all of us here in Johnson County, and how we can lend our support to these important topics. We'd love to keep these conversations happening, so if there's a topic that you would like the Community Foundation to convene around, we would love to hear from you as well. So at the CFJC, we believe in the power of community, not just as a place that we live, but as a network of shared responsibility, mutual respect, and collective hope. And today, as we gather to affirm something vital, that being a strong community means that we are a welcoming one as well. Immigrants and refugees bring with them not only stories of resilience and courage, but also their dreams, talents, and aspirations. They enrich our neighborhoods with culture, innovation, language, and perspective. They start businesses, fill essential roles, raise families, and contribute to the social fabric in ways seen and unseen. But we also know that the journey to build a new life is not easy. It requires navigating complex systems, overcoming trauma, facing language barriers, and often confronting bias and isolation. And that's where we come in. As neighbors, organizations, and community leaders, we can all play a role in making sure that everyone arrives here seeking safety, opportunity, or a fresh start is met with open doors. Creating a welcoming community isn't just the right thing to do, it's also the smart thing to do. It builds social cohesion, it fuels economic growth, and deepens our collective sense of belonging. Most importantly, it reflects the best of who we are, a community grounded in dignity, compassion, and opportunity for all. Again, thank you so much for engaging in our conversation today. When the Community Foundation set out to host these community conversations, we really just wanted to play the convener role. And that's what we've been able to do over the last few sessions. So we bring in experts in the area of focus that we're talking about and really turn the floor over to them to lay a ground laying presentation so we understand the complexity of the issue, and then have our local service providers, service experts, who really are meeting face to face with those most impacted by the issue, tell their insights and share their experiences as well. So with that, I'm so delighted to have Peter Gerlach with us this afternoon. Have a little bio of Peter. So Peter is Assistant Professor of Instruction in International Studies program at the University of Iowa and the Executive Director of the Iowa City Foreign Relations Council. After serving in the U.S. Peace Corps in Mongolia, he earned a PhD in Cultural Foundations of Education from Syracuse University, where he conducted dissertation research on lived experience of international students at Grinnell College. Dr. Gerlach's teaching areas include international studies, international education, refugee and immigrant studies, and community engaged learning. He served on the board of directors at the Refugee and Immigrant Association, the planning committee of the Refugee Alliance of Johnson County, and is a member of the inaugural 2023-24 Council on Foreign Relations Higher Education Ambassador Program. Not busy supporting our community at all. Dr. Gerlach, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Okay, let's see if, there we go, good. Yes, first of all, I want to say how much I appreciate being here, being invited by the Community Foundation. And we have a true set of experts who will be on the panel very soon, who know far more than I do about this topic because they are in the community doing the work. And before I get to my slides, I want to say very quickly that what I'll be focusing on are primarily the challenges that face our community. I wholeheartedly endorse everything that Shelley just told you, particularly the strength and resilience, the joy, the optimism of those in our community who are at present being targeted directly. This is a challenging time. For me, this is a personal topic. My father was an immigrant from Germany. You can see he came in 1959. There are photos of him on the ship. Here he is coming over from Europe, and here is the you might recognize this, the Statue of Liberty. When I learned about these photos, when my older brother gave them to me, it was sort of a revelation to see his actual experience, capture a moment in time. My father came to this country after surviving World War II. He was a boy when the war began and became old enough that he was required to be a Hitler Youth leader. And he would often talk about the stories that really began to shape his life. He had a very difficult life in lots of ways, a very wonderful life in lots of ways. So today, before you, when I'm standing in front of you, I understand the inherited trauma that he experienced. The bombs dropping on him, the challenges of fitting in the United States, the accent that many people said he had. They had a hard time understanding him, as well as the sort of desire to be in Germany. His life was in two places, and so the question of home was always a difficult one for him. So as I speak to you today, I'm also speaking from personal experience, not being an immigrant myself, but bearing witness to my father's experience. The one that I most want to point to is here. These are different trajectories that the United States could be on. This here is zero migration. If we continue on the track that the Trump administration is talking about, really cutting off all avenues for immigration, this will be the US population over time. Really you can see 2100 here. If we had high immigration, you can see here, we would have a population boom. And then here is main migration, if we were to keep the steady course of which we had just before this administration took over. And then, of course, this one here, low immigration, which is perhaps most accurate to what we have at the moment, but somewhere in between. You can see our population will decline. Going next, it's also very important to note, and I think often this is an important place to talk about the bigger picture, about and making an argument not just for humanitarian reasons, but economic ones. And we know very clearly that in the United States, much of our economy is in partnership with having new Americans. And so it is very much incumbent upon us to think about population and our economy in ways that we need more people to do and be active in all parts of our economy. We also know, many of us who grew up here in Iowa, that we have a strong legacy of refugee resettlement. In fact, Governor Ray basically came up with the idea in the United States, and then we had a larger system incorporating with other countries around the world for refugee resettlement. But this is for many of us, a very proud history in Iowa that we can point to. Secondary migration is something that I talk about a lot with my students, simply meaning that in most cases, at least as we talk about refugees primarily, but also immigrants too, that Iowa is often not the first place that they will resettle. It is often a secondary migration location. So they may start, for example, on the coast and then choose for a number of different reasons to move to other places in the country, of which Iowa is increasingly becoming popular for the reasons that you might think, right? Or the reasons you might guess. High quality of living, good schools, maybe even the Midwest nice that some of us believe is in Iowa. And so there are compelling reasons, including increasingly large communities. I'll touch on that in a moment, where folks that start at a primary point in the country recognize that say, oh, Iowa City or the Johnson County area has a large population of folks from Congo or Sudan or Myanmar, lots of different places. And so recognizing that's a place where they could find community. So it helps explain how increasingly our numbers of people moving here, and a lot of words, very tiny for you, but I want to point you specifically to these numbers here. So this is data that has been shared with me a few years ago by Jeff Fruin, the city manager of Iowa City. And I continue to update that when I do presentations or when I teach the course that I do every spring on refugees and immigrants. This over here is, showing sort of the broader, bigger picture, including population growth again, and then the economy. But in terms of, putting that all together, what does it mean? You can see that there are different spots. This is taken by county data, which shows us that to a significant extent, those moving to Iowa are in far greater number than those moving away from Iowa. Those who move away from Iowa tend to be younger folks who were born and raised here in the state of Iowa. In many cases, younger white folks who believe that opportunity is elsewhere, whatever opportunity means to them and wherever elsewhere is. And the numbers, because they're worth mentioning. So here it talks about domestic change, international change, and then the net migration change. So the domestic change is statewide, that is, from the period of 2020 to 2023, 11,000, just about over 11,000 people moved away. Folks born and raised with U.S. citizenship moved away from the state of Iowa. The international change is over 20,000. Folks who are refugees and immigrants moving to the state of Iowa. That is double the number. And this is happening broadly across the state, right? But you can dig down deeper into, counties like our own in Johnson County. 383 domestic change out, 2,482 international moving to our county. And so it helps give a clearer picture, even on a very local level, of how the demographics in our state is changing. And of course, you can replicate this in states across the country, recognizing that much of the demographic shift that we've been talking about for a long time is presently happening in significant ways. We also, many of us know that there are growing minorities in Iowa, the largest of which are Latinos and Hispanics. And we can see, again, I always go back and forth on numbers. I think, the stories, the experiences, the real people sharing their lives are what's most important. But data, numbers, statistics are telling, right? And so we can see right here, for example, a 57% increase since 2010, right? Our state is changing in really big ways. And many of us know that West Liberty became the first majority minority city council in the state of Iowa, right? And so again, even if you want to make, again, the economic argument, according to this data set from the American Immigration Council, a reputable body, 187,300 immigrant residents, and you can see immigrant spending power, 5.2 billion. That's a significant number, right? Again, I think those that are critical of immigration may be more persuaded by the economic argument than anything else, although that is a strained argument at the moment. So I want to walk you through what I'm seeing as 7 issues that I'm paying attention to and that I think we all need to be paying attention to. Many of these are pulled from the headlines, and in fact, I'm going to show you some headlines. The first, funding broadly has been cut or diminished for nonprofits, organizations, and government agencies. And these have happened both at the federal level and at the state level. There's fierce competition now for donations from generous individuals, which can include foundations and religious providers. But the concern is increasingly, and for somebody who is an executive director of a nonprofit organization, we see that that competition is actually quite fierce. Yes, in moments of crisis, individuals, generous individuals and families can step up. But now when we have these inflection points, like what's happening to the economy, the stock market, the US bonds, right? And uncertainty about jobs, the ability for individuals to, supplant, to replace those very large federal and state dollars is incredibly difficult, and in many cases, simply impossible. We do know that, as I'm sure you have seen, perhaps, there are, relative to the subject we're talking about, support for refugees and immigrants, certain organizations that have truly been targeted, that have had a very difficult time proceeding forward. Lutheran Services in Iowa is one. And this, I pointed out 3 areas here: Lutheran Services in Iowa, the Catherine McCulley Center, USCRI in Des Moines, and then how this hurts Iowa communities: job losses, strained services. This is becoming increasingly a problem where these organizations, which our community across the county has really relied upon. They have been excellent partners in this work, resettling folks and providing services, are now facing the kind of funding cuts that really make difficult the work that they have long been doing and that we have looked to them to do. And so now it's easy to imagine for all of us that maybe haven't even walked through the doors of these organizations about the state that they are currently in. The second issue, related very closely to the first, is staffing. Most, especially larger organizations, are drastically cutting back staff and services. All organizations are impacted. I've listed some here: the International Rescue Committee, which has an office in Des Moines. It opened up an office in Iowa City. Now really functionally does not have an office in Iowa City. And I remember talking with the executive director there early this year, about what she thought would be coming. And just the expression on her face, right? Like, this changes everything. The Catherine McCulley Center in Cedar Rapids, Lutheran Services in Iowa, many locations across the state. One thing to keep in mind for these organizations is the refugee cap. So this is a number that is set by the White House every fiscal year. And so last fiscal year, President Biden set this number at 125,000. So that's how many individuals would be resettled in communities across the United States. That number now is 0. So there are no new refugees that are coming to the United States. You can imagine, right, what happens in that moment. Now, this did happen in Trump 1.0. where the number was reduced every single year and got closer to 0 by the end of his final year. But what this means, practically speaking, is that at capacity, where these organizations were, with funding, with staffing, with programs, with services, to have that cut to 0, and now no new incoming folks, they no longer have the need, let's call it, or at least the government doesn't see a need anymore for there to be so many people working at these organizations, for them to receive the funding that they once were. If there is no need for refugee resettlement, then there is no need for these organizations, at least as it has been over the last 4 years. So funding sources have been cut off, withheld, or limited. Programs, services, and outreach are limited now. And if we look at the headlines, again, one thing I will say is that the reporting on everything that I'm talking about has really been excellent across our community and including at the University of Iowa with the Daily Iowan. Facing federal funds freeze, tough decisions. Lutheran Services in Iowa announces layoffs. Catherine McCauley Center lays off nearly half its workforce in wake of federal refugee program cuts. Another story, very recent, you can see here, April 15th, just a week ago or so, Trump administration's pause of refugee resettlement upends lives, impacts Iowa. And I thought this was telling, right? We were just talking about Governor Ray. For a place that is known for its history of welcoming refugees, we now see that our most prized and important organizations doing this work cannot do this work the way they have been for so long. Iowa program, these are sort of the headlines, the sub headlines throughout. Iowa programs, families suffer cuts to federal support. Iowa politicians urge a pause is necessary. The pause also impacts families already resettled in the US. An important point, right? What about the folks who have recently been resettled here or have been resettled in the last year, 2, 3, 4 years, who continue to need, expect, hope for services and supports, programs to make a little bit easier the circumstances of their lives here in Iowa. I won't read all of this, but this is Ann Duggar. Some of you know Ann. I had the good fortune of working with Ann a couple of years ago as a community partner for a class I teach at the university. This year I'm working with Deb and with Teresa Stecker at IC Compassion at Open Heartland. And one line here, it just hurt the families that we brought here and that we said we would take care of. Not having that funding is really, really difficult. The third is attention, or rather targeting, is now on refugees and immigrants of all statuses presently in the US. All statuses. I mean truly all statuses. Undocumented folks, refugees and asylum seekers, permanent residents and those with green cards, TPS or temporary protected status, those on humanitarian parole, DACA folks or dreamers, you may know them of, international students who are here on non-immigrant visas, US citizens, including children, and yeah, I put on here the question of birthright citizenship is still to be determined. Families of mixed statuses, tourists. Tourists at airports are now being questioned, interrogated even. I read an article recently, they were all turned back to their home countries. Right, so at the bottom, maybe hard to see in the back, the goal is for an invisible wall to lead to self-deportation. This is truly one of the goals of Trump 2.0, a preference for self-deportation. Because why, amongst other reasons, I think we all remember the separation of families at the southern border and the crisis that caused for that administration. Who wants to see those headlines again? Who wants to see those protests again? Certainly they do not. And so if the squeeze is hard enough, maybe you will choose self-deportation. Maybe you as a parent will make the very difficult choice of being separated from your children or taking your children with you back to your home country. That's a decision now that the Trump administration has very gracefully given to all of us, to our neighbors, rather than making it themselves. So all of these statuses are now being targeted. And again, this is a slide that I won't play the video for you. Some of you have heard our president speak about immigrants. But the question that I put in front of my students, since the President of the United States normalizes hate speech against immigrants, shouldn't we expect that such rhetoric would become normalized in this country and around the world? And what is the cost of that? What is the heavy toll of that? If the President of the United States can talk this way, then why is it wrong for any of us to speak about our fellow human beings, our neighbors, in these ways? This is, I think, a really great source from the New York Times, what rights do immigrants have? And what I want to point out here in particular, again, I know it's a little hard to see, is this: situations in which the Trump administration has attempted to expand who is targeted and how. So what rights do different groups have when arriving in the US? Which people can immigration authorities detain and try to deport? And then finally, what due process rights do different groups have? Now, where it is circled is where there are new attempts, where this administration, again, is trying to target more visa categories, more status categories. So long-term and short-term visas, they're trying to go that way now. Green card holders, long-term visas, short-term visas, and again, the same here. Expanding the number of people that can be potentially, hopefully, self-deported or deported by the government. I'm sure a lot of you have heard, although, boy, I had a student write recently that when I showed him and his classmates last week, I showed them this slide, which on average, it's a great source from Inside Higher Ed. You can see here at the top, April 22nd, that is today, over 265 colleges and universities have identified 1,700 plus international students and recent graduates who have had their legal status changed by the State Department. That's about 100 per day now that we're seeing being added to this number. And my student said, I asked my friends on campus if they had heard about this, and they hadn't. These are their classmates. These are their dorm mates, and they don't know about it. But you can see how expansive this is across the country. The darker ones is private and then public in gray. The University of Iowa, we've had 5 students thus far whose visas have been revoked. No doubt that number will increase. Reasons given for this, it's really hard to discern. For the first international student who had his visa revoked, it was that he ran a red light 2 years ago. We know that there are other cases, right, where you can write an op-ed, critical of the United States relationship with Israel and the treatment of Gazans. The Turkish student wrote, who was pulled by masked agents off the street. She wrote that op-ed a year ago. So there's lots of reasons. My instinct tells me that this is social media. That this is the very easiest way using AI algorithms to use keywords and then locate these students. And now advice that is being given to me, even me, right, born and raised in the United States, US citizen, the advice being given increasingly to travelers, all of us, is that you should scrub your phones if you are returning into the United States. You too could have your life be made very difficult. It does not matter what your status is. So our international students are being targeted also. And here's a recent Daily Iowan article explaining that a little bit more. Advocacy by organizations and groups has been more muted for fear of reprisal from federal and state levels, right? Could there be additional funding impacts? What about negative PR pressures? You could become a target for ICE activities or law enforcement, local and national groups, right? And advocacy, it's important to note, is still happening. And we are still being told we should write to our elected officials. We should tell them what is going on. I don't know, I have some skepticism about this. Like I noted a couple slides ago in the one that was talking about about the Catherine McCulley Center and Iowa politicians saying that this pause is a good thing. But as I say in yellow there, urgent needs for refugees and immigrants has not changed. In fact, it is more pressing now and every day more pressing. These are just a handful of the services and needs for our neighbors, for our community mates that are at risk when we can't advocate, when we can't support, when we can't provide programs, education, and training. It's a whole number of things that some of us don't have to think about. And the privilege of not having to think about that means that we may not know how important, how vital all of these folks are who are on the panel will tell you about, and the organizations that they represent. Incredible work that they are doing, and how much more difficult that can be today. Again, early on, Governor Reynolds directs Iowa law enforcement to cooperate with Trump deportations. That is January 17th of this year. On the same day, immigration advocates try to ease the fear of the unknown, right? Both things happening at the same time. This makes things very difficult too. These are words, some of which DEI, maybe you're most familiar with. These are words that the Trump 2.0 administration does not use, does not want us to use, and can be pulled. Funding can be pulled, support can be pulled, targeting could happen to you and yours should you use these words. I mean, this is the short list, by the way. Yeah, female. By the way, male is not on here. Privilege, political, advocacy, as we're talking about now, diversity, discrimination, oppression, Native American, racism, social justice. That makes very difficult, right? Even the words now increasingly across the state at public and private institutions, people are scrubbing their websites to, again, not be targeted. And this is hard to do from the federal level, to be sure. But of course, we're dealing with state actors also who are looking very carefully at this, right? While also knowing that Iman's organization just today sent this out, right? There are certain things that our community needs to be aware of, what's happening in the state, bills going in front of us, right? Saying no to HF 572, transportation as smuggling. If this isn't something you know a whole lot about, I encourage you to learn more about it. There are regularly over legislative sessions increasingly bills that target not only refugees and immigrants, but those who support and welcome them. 5 are networks. Networks locally and all around the U.S. have formed to support individuals, families, and organizations at the community level. So there's interest from across our community and people like all of you for showing up here today, right? These networks are incredibly important. And as you can see, some of the ones I listed here are folks on the panel that you'll hear from in just a little bit. I have seen in many cases that these efforts are truly genuine and necessary and important, vital, but they can often be siloed, excuse me. A lot of the conversations that I hear happening around our community are happening there and there and there. And I would love to see us find an opportunity, a forum for more people who care like we do, who are here today and who I've spoken in front of Sunday and many others have talked with, that we can find a larger forum to come together for lots of reasons, maybe the least of which is to see how many people believe in and are advocating for wanting change to support our refugee and immigrant friends and neighbors. And then there are those folks, right, that aren't connected to a network but want to help. There are many of those folks, too, who are really unsettled by what is happening to our democracy and to the people that live within the so-called walls of this democracy. Local organizations rally in Cedar Rapids to support immigrant families. That too is happening. Issue 6, mistrust, fear, and uncertainty. The constancy of immigration headlines, ICE activities, and threats of and actual deportations keep mistrust, fear, and uncertainty high. Right? These mass deportations that we heard so much about in the days just before the inauguration, those haven't happened yet. Right? But we know that installations are being built up in Guantanamo Bay, for example. We know that the Trump administration has bought a strip of land, rather a large strip along the southern border between the United States and Mexico, saddling 3 states. We also know increasingly what's happening in El Salvador, right? And the new agreements between the United States government and what are essentially gulags in other countries, right, where due process is no longer needed. I just read today that another 8 federal judges, immigration judges, were fired, right? You wouldn't keep them around when there's an urgent need for people to get in front of immigration judges. You wouldn't fire them if you wanted them to have due process. This administration does not want folks to have due process. I don't know that that's a controversial statement. There are high-profile cases that are happening regularly. This Trump administration is dedicated with folks like Stephen Miller and Tom Homan, Kristi Noem, who are fervent believers in the work that they are doing. They have partners, like I said, in El Salvador, expanding powers. Immigrants are scapegoats, they're targets, and they're both visible and invisible, as I talk about regularly with my students. It may be difficult for some of us to imagine being hyper-visible and hyper-invisible at the very same time and walking through life that way. The fear of being in the system means that fewer people use public services and healthcare and may avoid schools, the police, going to work, right? If you were fearful in any one of those regards, you would worry that if you had a doctor's appointment, that you would be in the system. And so folks are increasingly not getting the medical care that they need, or questioning whether they should drop their kids off at school or open the doors to their business. That's deeply troubling too. And as I tell people regularly, this is the point. This is the point, right? Again, for that harsh and cold truth of the goal for self-deportation, right? To make us all, every one of us in this room, fearful and have greater mistrust and be uncertain about those neighbors and those friends and those colleagues. That is the point. Yes. Again, I think the reporting has been very good. This is just a screen grab of a module in the course page that I use. And I told the students at the beginning of the semester, you know, there's so much happening so quickly, I have trouble keeping up with it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a module. I'm just going to add from time to time when things, you know, I think you should know are happening. I'll just put them in there and you can read them on your own time. This is now a ridiculously long, this is half, maybe, of the headlines that I put in front of the students, just extra reading, right? And you read them. You spend, you know, a minute or two just reading those headlines. It's demoralizing. It's really a lot for young people too, for college students, you know, who are thinking, I'm about to enter into, you know, work life. I'm about to, you know, become a part of real life. And this is just one sliver of the reality that our college students will be graduating into. And finally, focus. I truly believe, and that is why I am so happy to, and why I'm committed to continuing to do presentations like these across the community and to anybody that will listen, is that it's vital that we keep the attention on this. We're being pulled in lots of different directions that for many of us, we don't have a vocabulary or imagination for, because many of us in this room, some of us have, but many, most of us perhaps, have not experienced personally living under an authoritarian regime. We are currently hitting the marks, as I talk with my students in another class regularly. When I talk about the case of Hungary, for example, and I show them the authoritarian playbook, a well-documented playbook that has antecedents throughout history. We're hitting too many of those marks, guys. We're hitting too many of them. So it's easy to feel overwhelmed, fearful, even defeated. Again, this is the point. This is the point. It is important to recognize that this is the purpose, right? We can do something when we know that this is the purpose. So, as I said at the beginning, our strong and resilient neighbors, our fellow humans, are especially vulnerable and in need of all of us as informed, active, and using our privilege. They do not need our pity, they do not need our uncertainty, and they certainly don't need our compassion fatigue. They need us informed and ready to act, to be advocates on their behalf when they cannot, and to walk beside them, to walk behind them as they lead us into a much better future in Iowa and in the United States. And we live in a community, I think, in Iowa City and the broader Johnson County that does affirm support, and that we have leaders who are in elected office that hear us, folks like Mazahir Salih sitting here, who hear us and know that we are a large number. And when we get together, we can do good and powerful things. My organization, Sunday Goshit's organization, the Iowa City Foreign Relations Council, a few years ago, we did a series on refugees and immigrants in Iowa, of which I'm very proud. And one of our programs, the sixth and final, was about how refugees and immigrant stories, it maybe would be more accurate to say, should inform public policy. That there are communities across Iowa, Storm Lake and West Liberty, Columbus Junction, and many others that are diversifying through those demographic changes that I talked about earlier, that should be the model for how people talk about a new economy, a vibrant community and society in 2025. List here of different organizations across our state that's doing this really important work, and that's all I've got.
Great. So we're going to now transition to kind of a panel discussion portion of our program. If you give me a quick second here, I will. Do a little bit of transitioning. So while we transition, if we could please have our panelists come up and take a seat wherever you would like. I'm going to introduce someone that I'm very hopeful really needs no introduction, because Deb Duncase is such a foundational member of our community in so many ways. For over 30 years, Deb was dedicated herself to education as an educator in our community. And in 2019, she retired after 21 years of serving as the executive director of the Iowa Children's Museum. Our generations now of children had a great experience at the Iowa Children's Museum. But in retirement did not stop her. In fact, may have reinvigorated her a bit, because after retiring from the Children's Museum, Deb has been teaching in the nonprofit management department at the University of Iowa in leadership, strategic planning, diversity, equity, and inclusion, cultural competency, and nonprofit world of global change. In March of 2019, Deb founded Open Heartland, a nonprofit organization serving over 400 local immigrant families, primarily from Central America and Mexico. That's 100% volunteer-driven. Open Heartland's mission is to provide support to these families as they navigate through poverty, food and housing insecurity, as well as the daily threats of being concerned about staying here in our community. Deb also volunteers her time generously with Rotary and the District 6000 Iowa Most, which stands for Miles of Smiles, Cleft Lip and Palate and Cataract Medical Mission, serving indigenous populations in Guatemala. So, excellent person to turn the microphone over to work with our panel today. So I will let you have it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deb.
So just hang on to this.
Yeah, let's.
Okay.
If you.
I can hang on to it. It'll be fine.
Yeah, if you have you can clip it too
Okay.
and just.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. And the panel has a microphone too.
Yeah.
It's really powerful to see a room full of people who really deeply care about helping us create a more welcoming and just community, especially in this time, as Peter mentioned, when immigrants and refugees are often faced with barriers instead of bridges. This evening, we're here to listen to our panelists, to learn and to stand in solidarity. These remarkable individuals that are leaders from our local nonprofits have all dedicated their lives and careers to supporting immigrants and refugees in our region. These are the people who help newcomers find housing, navigate complex legal systems, access education and healthcare, and most importantly, feel like they belong. And I saw belonging was a word on your don't use list. Yep. Wow, can't even talk about how crazy that is. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists first, before we dive into the questions, to introduce themselves to you all. So just pass this around.
There's one here.
Oh, you got one there? Okay. How about we just go down the table and do that?
Just speak like this. You hear me? Yeah. Hi, my name is Mazahir Saleh. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Immigrant Welcome Network. And this is an organization that helps refugees and immigrants resettle in Iowa City and help them just navigate the complexity of the resettlement. Earlier as we talk about a lot of barriers that the people face, so we become like that middle person when the refugees and immigrants arrive. We have amazing resources in this community, but not necessarily those people know about it. So we help them navigate. I think our organization found in 2003. We are only 2 years old. So that's it.
Thank you.
I'm Isaac Apple. I'm here with the University of Iowa Legal Clinic. We do a lot of work providing pro bono legal counsel to people who need it. And we've also been doing a lot of work with the community recently, including presentations to improve the literacy of our migrant communities and what their rights are, and the benefits that they have access to.
Hi, my name is Ayman Sharif, and I'm the director with the Center for Worker Justice, which I believe many of you know. It has been here since 2012, the Center for Worker Justice, and the work of the organization is focused on immigrants and low-wage workers. We provide support and advocacy to make sure that people are not exploited at the workplace. Housing, affordable housing is a big thing as well. And then empowering people to really become knowledgeable and become, especially about their rights and stuff. So this is our biggest fight since the inception of the organization. And it is not now more than any other time. Our services are needed to support our immigrant communities.
Yeah, it's hard to talk after you. My name is Sunday Goshit, and I'm the president of the board of directors of IC Compassion. So I'm here in that capacity. But like Peter said, I also serve on the board of Iowa City Foreign Relations Council. And at IC Compassion, basically, about 18 years old now. What we do is we're focusing more on immigrants and refugees now, but it used to be an organization that was providing services for the less privileged in the eastern part of Iowa City. And again, like I said, we focus more on immigrants now because we provide immigration services, helping people to file for papers for change of status and any form of thing that is done in immigration, and most of it at a very, very low cost, because most of the immigrants and refugees do not have the money that lawyers would require. In addition to that, we also have other projects or services within the community. This wonderful friend of mine started the Global Food Project, which is a community gardening project that brings immigrants and long-term Iowans together to create community, but also enables people to provide to cultivate culturally relevant food. And the program has actually expanded very, very much. He has handed it over to IC Compassion. We also do English language classes. We help people with citizenship classes. Those who have applied for citizenship, before they go for interviews, we give them to someone to help them to be able to go through. So those are some of the services that we provide at IC Compassion.
Thanks, Sunday. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Sinwell. I'm a Catholic worker. I'm a co-founder of the Iowa City Catholic Worker. We started in 2016. I'm a volunteer there. We have 2 houses of hospitality where we house immigrants and refugees and provide supportive services and wraparound services for them. Our sister organization is Escucha Mi Voz, and that's immigrant-led. I also volunteer for them as well. My day job, I'm actually a nurse practitioner. I'm dual certified in psych and family practice. So I work for Proteus, and we travel around the state of Iowa, provide primary care for migrant seasonal farm workers. A lot of those workers are undocumented workers or here on temporary statuses such as H-2A visas. So that's a little bit about us.
Okay, thank you all for the introductions. We're now going to go through a series of 2 questions per panelist. Sadly, you only have 2 minutes to answer your question. And we're going to hold to that to make sure we have time for questions at the end. Wish us luck with that, because it's not going to be easy with only 2 minutes.
So is it 2 questions for the 2 questions and 2 minutes for the 2 questions?
For you, yes. No, we get 2 minutes per question.
Per question.
2 minutes per question.
Okay.
Okay. Ayman, the first question is going to be for you.
Okay.
What are the key challenges that immigrant communities are currently facing in light of the ongoing, increasingly aggressive immigration policies and rhetoric?
So thank you so much. So first of all, I think Peter, the presentation was rich enough to answer most of those questions, my question, but I would definitely consider certain things. Fear, I want to highlight that because it's a big thing. This is a big challenge that we face now every day. I will very quickly mention a story that happened just last week where a 9-year boy was hit by a car and died in Waterloo. His name is David Chavez, and then the family and the community is a Latina, so everyone was really looking to go out and honor the death and do the services and all of those things, but people were afraid. They were afraid to come out to the church to honor that. And they were reaching out to seek support of the community in case something goes wrong and then they become an ICE target. So this is the kind of fear we're talking about here. Another fear that I think it's a good way to answer the question is when we have a worker who just like and misclassified worker, meaning he was working with an employer and then just recently chopped his finger. It's a workplace injury that the employer did not want to recognize that as workplace injury, and then the worker was afraid, scared to really pursue a case that can bring his rights back to him, and we were working with the worker so that to overcome the fear. So those are the kind of things that are really happening. I don't know how fast I am going, but I think we should expect so many things. Exploitation in workplace that would increase. Even our community will be more reluctant to support. With the introduction of the bills, as Peter pointed out, this is really a difficult time that will really divide us. Our community will be more divided. There will be, we will see people domestic violence and child labor issues, people afraid to come forward and even report those things when they happen. And we already inherited a bad situation with those things, but now we only know that this will be even more or more worse than what we expect.
Thank you very much for that. Next question is going to Masahir. So you actually had 2 more seconds. Okay, Masahir, what are some of the biggest barriers newly arrived immigrant and refugee families face in Johnson County, and what support systems or policy changes could help address them?
You know, there is many barriers, but I'm going to talk about few due to the time. Housing instability. I think affordable housing is critical challenges. Many families dispute having some money or some saving when they come here to secure housing. They cannot just rent due to they don't have credit history, they don't have lender history, and they don't have is a cosigner, and that's what the landlord require. That's why the Immigrant Welcome Network, they have now the Welcome House where they can stay 45 days, and we help them resettle by creating some of the network like landlord network, where many like landlords who sign up to be in the network are the one who waiving that requirement of credit history, renter history, and all this. Another barrier is employment barriers. Securing employment is another significant hindrance. Language barriers and familiarity also with the U.S. job market. They don't know anything about that, all this deductions and everything in the big stuff and everything. We have to teach them all that. So this is make them, make it really harder to find a job. Also, language and culture barrier, limited English proficiency affect access to essential services, including healthcare and education and legal assistance. This language gap can lead to misunderstanding and lack of awareness about available resources. We have amazing resources, but they not necessarily know how to navigate it. So healthcare access in healthcare is challenging due to the factor 5 years. You have to be here 5 years in order to get Medicaid for the parent. Children, they will get, if they are documented, they will get Medicaid. But, this will be even more harder for undocumented people. But, health access is very difficult here. Even though we have free medical clinic, we have all this, but still, the need is great. Those 4 I want to highlight right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Masahir. Next question is for Emily. I'm sure many of us in the audience today don't understand what protective accompaniment is. Can you talk to us about that, and why does it matter?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Deb. No, just kidding. So how many in here have ever been up to the Cedar Rapids Homeland Security field office? Raise your hand. Awesome. Cool. So I just want to talk a little bit about protective accompaniment. This is something we do a lot at the Iowa City Catholic Worker and Escucha Mi Voz. We did this a lot in what I like to, you said, Peter, Trump 1.0, kind of slowed down during the last administration, has really picked up lately. And this is really physically accompanying somebody who's at risk for violence or intimidation, being detained, family separation, which we did see in Cedar Rapids during Trump 1.0. And it's a way for us to walk with them, to share the journey, and to maybe expose some of the injustices that are happening right in our backyard and document them and expose them. But a lot of folks who come in, say, not anymore because it's closed, but through the border, through the CBP One app, who are in the asylum process or have other statuses, they are actually required, not everybody, but a lot of people are required to present to their field office. And for Iowa City and for Eastern Iowa, places like Waterloo, Dubuque, Postville, they have to go to Cedar Rapids. And how frequently, it depends. During the previous administration, it was pretty regular, pretty predictable. That first check-in was at 3 months, 6 months, and then they go every year. And what we're seeing now is people being detained in Cedar Rapids. We're seeing people having to come back a week later, a month later. There's no predictability. This is where they are at risk of being detained, not when they go to court. not only are folks having to check in, sometimes they have a GPS ankle bracelet. A lot of folks still have to check in on their phone through facial recognition every week. So this is very stressful. When check-ins come up, it's a time of, I don't want to speak for people, but it's, it's a scary time because they could be taken, and there's not a lot they can do. And so you could see in some of the pictures that Peter showed that we go up in masses and we support them. And we like to say, like, if your grandma's watching, maybe you won't take the cookie out of the cookie jar. You don't know, but our presence means a lot, not only to immigrants who have to check in, but we're watching what the officers are doing, and we have our eyes on them. So,
Thank you, Emily. Okay, next one, we're going back to Masahir. What inspired you to found the Immigrant Welcome Network of Johnson County, and what gaps were you seeing in local services at that time?
I was, I don't know if many of you know that, also I was a former executive directors of the Center for Worker Justice. During that time, our mission is just to empower people, empower low-income people for identifying problem and just solve it. But while we're doing that, we become well-known of helping immigrants. That's why people reach out to us sometimes, say, we find this family in the street. They staying in the hotel for 7 days, they run out of money, and now they are in the street. Because they came from there thinking that next day they will find a house. And when you talk to them and they came with all this, we coming to America. That means everything will be easy, and we come with $1,000. That's a lot of exchange money from their country. And I just used to take them, myself and another allies who helped me. We used to take them to my house, their house, and we help them navigate and settle. What is really started in my living room is the Immigrant Welcome Network right now. Because after that, my kids start growing, they will be very, very happy to have those family come in the house. But when they start become older, they don't like that anymore. In the beginning, bring them home. I will give them my bed, and now, don't be in my room. So that's why I just said this is really a need, and the need is really great. I know there is a shelter house. I know there is many things, but this is unique for immigrants. Immigrants really have unique services that need to be met. They need that middle person to help them navigate all the good resources that we have. That's why we found this.
Beautifully stated. Thank you. Next Sunday, you are going to have both of your questions in a row. So
Okay.
First question,
Lucky me.
lucky you. How can nonprofits in Johnson County build stronger networks to support immigrants and refugees more holistically?
I think that when we look at what all the discussions that have been made, Peter's presentation, and all the wonderful things that all of these groups are doing, there's need for us to just really come together. That's how I'll summarize it. We need to just be able to diffuse the fear, and I think that so addressing the nonprofits, all of us who are sitting on the table here, working at IC Compassion as president of the board of directors, I've realized that there are lots of things that many organizations are working in isolation of each other. So we're doing all these marvelous things, but we're not coordinating those efforts. And when we don't, then it becomes a problem. So I think collaboration and partnership is very, very important among the nonprofits. Resource sharing. All of these people here have wonderful resources regarding the kind of projects and things that they handle. Sharing resources among these organizations. And I realize that there are so many things at IC Compassion that we could share with other organizations. And we also need other organizations to share their resources with us. Developing cultural competency among the organizations and also service providers, I think is very, very critical. If you look at those of us who are sitting here, we're a diverse group of people. What that means is whether somebody likes the word diversity or not, it does exist. And so helping people, developing that cultural competency where we can actually work with people efficiently is very, very important. We need to have a community-based support system where we are really taking into consideration the immigrants themselves and refugees themselves, their leaders, and see how we can actually coordinate the leaders so that they can be voices for their own people in the things that they do, just like the reason why we started most of these organizations. And we've talked about advocacy, and different organizations do advocacy, but not everybody, not all organizations are actually strong in advocacy. There are those who simply provide services. How can we strengthen those who provide advocacy and so on? So I think that these, among others, are some of the things that nonprofits need to do in order to come together, build a very strong support system for each other, and be more effective.
Thank you. Next question.
And the second one.
Second one is, what are the common obstacles to nonprofit collaboration, and how can we work to overcome them?
So we're talking about collaboration. There are lots of obstacles when it comes to collaboration. First of all, I think Peter mentioned it, and some other people have also mentioned it here. There is competition for resources. Even when the situation was not as bad as this, the resources were being competed for. Now it's even worse that most of the funding have been taken away. So the competition for resources for local, state, and federal grants, it's very, very serious. And this can discourage, open communication and collaboration, because then we'll be competing with CWJ instead of collaborating. So the competition for resources is very, very critical. There's lack of trust in communication with each other, because when you are competing for resources, there's a tendency for us to begin to not trust each other. And so misunderstanding of, organizational structures could also be very, very important. Sometimes we don't even seem to understand the mission that each of us comes to the table with. And if we don't come together and sit down around a table and discuss what the missions are, it's very important. One of the things that I have realized is that because we have not had a common forum where we can actually come and sit down and have those discussions, everybody is going his own way. Now, the advantage of the current situation is it has forced many people to actually come to a round table, to the round table to be able to discuss. What I have also identified is that we could share resources, and sharing resources can be very, very difficult if we're not coordinated. And if I need volunteers, I could go to CWJ and say, I need volunteers. Do you know how I can get them? In the last 1 or 2 months, I had more than 30 people registered to be volunteers at IC Compassion. I don't need to use all of those. I can refer them to other people. And that's what we have been doing. So how do we overcome obstacles? Well, we need to foster a culture of abundance and shared purpose among each other. There's something that we do, that there must be a goal that all of us are aiming at. And if we don't focus on that goal, it's going to be difficult. So that shared purpose is very, very important. And we need to shift the narrative from competition to collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are not competing, we are collaborating. And that's very, very important. I think that nonprofits, those on this table, and churches and all the people who do all this amazing work, have to shift to collaboration. Sorry, I told you 2 minutes was going to be enough.
You're good. It was worth it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sunday. You haven't heard from Isaac yet. So Isaac has 2 questions, and one follows the other. Isaac, how does the University of Iowa Legal Clinic fit into the picture of refugee and immigrant services in Johnson County?
Thank you, Deb. So the University of Iowa Legal Clinic is a pro bono law firm staffed by law students at the University of Iowa. We provide direct services to people who need it on a pro bono basis, free. We've also been doing a lot of work with the community lately that's been focused on increasing the literacy of our migrant communities and the people who work with our migrant communities about the issues going on in the immigration system, the issues facing our migrant communities, and the rights that our migrant communities have, and the role that non-migrants can play in making sure that those rights stay protected. So, although the focus of the University of Iowa Legal Clinic has always been the direct representation of its clients, what we've been starting to do over the course of the last 6 months is build our ties with the community through things like Know Your Rights presentations that tell our communities exactly what their rights are and how they can defend themselves from ICE enforcement activities. We think that this is incredibly crucial. And some of the stuff you see on the news, just as Peter was saying in his excellent presentation, it's very scary, and we need to understand exactly why it's scary and exactly what we can do to make it less scary for people. And that's kind of what the University of Iowa Legal Clinic has been trying to do.
Oh, excellent. Second question for you is, what information do you give out during your presentations that people have found most useful?
So we give out a lot of information, and we try to tailor each presentation to the organization that we go to. But one thing kind of sticks true through all of our presentations, and Peter kind of stole my thunder about this at the beginning, but the importance of media literacy, the importance of having a very of keeping track not just with what's going on, but trying to have a nuanced understanding of what's going on, and trying to make sure that you can, because what we want to foster is people being educated people able to have complicated discourse about this topic, because it really deserves that level of nuance. And one thing that can be really destructive is when we start saying things without really researching or having a full understanding of how our discourse can affect communities. For example, I think it's always really important to tie all of our discussions back to Johnson County. I call it bringing it back to earth, Johnson County. So it's important that we tie everything back to Johnson County, because when we focus on national narratives, it's really easy to get the sense that immigration enforcement is a sword that's hanging over everybody's head. It's only a matter of time before it comes down. That's not necessarily the case. And the truth is that our immigration enforcement system is a little more clumsy than a lot of the narratives that are painted by the national news media would like us to think. And that's the reason why a lot of intellectuals have started calling these policies shock and awe policies, because their goal, as Peter says, is not even necessarily to be implemented, but rather to frighten people and scare them. So it's really important that we keep track of what is actually going on and what people say is going on, because oftentimes there's a disconnect there.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Ayman, the next question is for you. As a community, what practical steps can we take to build an effective, united response that protects and supports our immigrant community?
Thanks.
Sure.
So, I think, the magnitude of this problem is well known. Everybody, it's unprecedented, but it is well known at least. At the Center for Worker Justice, and early on, even before these elections, sensing that all things are going this direction, we started really communicating and building connections with local, but also regional and beyond groups to strategize as what will be the best way. We're lucky because there is a lot of knowledge and history and successes of the past that is not only here, but in other places. So I think it is very important to think of this as something, or as a kind of resistance and momentum that should be built locally in our local, but spread outside regionally and beyond that. So now we are working and we are extending our conversations to create this kind of momentum. In the past, we've been talking to churches and talking to labor organizations. We've been talking and considering even bringing legal resources like the legal clinic and other resources. All those things are very important in this fight, because it will need all this knowledge. The community groups, community organizations, funders, and philanthropy. So we need to figure out how to put all those people on the same table at the local level, and then connect that with other groups who are sharing the same concerns and living the same problem, regionally and beyond that. We've been connecting with Iowa immigration movement for justice, for example, just an example, in Des Moines, who like courageously led the fight regarding the Senate filing 2340 that became a law early on, and that was held. So those people are the expert. There's enough expert people around us, and we need to make those connections, building relationship with sister organizations who do the same, and understand who is doing what or who is specialized in what, and then support that. I think it's the way to go. Particularly, churches and labor organizations, everyone knows the history of support those institutions provided in these situations and similar ones during crisis. So it is now the time to lean back to our local resources and bring those resources, and the University of Iowa resources. Those are magnificent resources. We cannot really tolerate not to exploit those resources to the maximum towards our common goals.
Excellent, thank you. And our last question tonight goes to Emily. The question, Emily, is what's the difference between charity and justice, and how does that show up in our community?
Yeah, thank you. I like to talk about this. We talk about this a lot at the Catholic Worker, charity versus justice. And I think a lot of us kind of mentioned it tonight on the panel anyway. But it's really important to know that these two things are not in opposition of each other, but they're also not interchangeable, right? We need to do both. And sometimes it can be easy for communities to get stuck in that charity mindset. And that's because it's easy, right? It's easier sometimes to do charity. You're fixing an immediate need for the community. It's tangible. And it's really emotionally rewarding for someone to provide food, right? Or shelter to somebody. And then on the opposite side of that is the justice work. And that's really the slow work. It takes a long time. It's uncomfortable work. It really challenges the status quo. And that can even include our own institutions that we're in. And so this idea of charity and justice, we talk about a lot. It's easy to hop on one foot, right? We want to walk with both feet. And we call that 2 feet in love and action, charity and justice at the Catholic Worker. I like to tell a story really quick about a community. And there's different versions of this story out there, but they live next to a river, and one day they're down at the river washing clothes, and they find a baby, right? Here is a little baby, and they can't believe it, and they bring it in, and they give it food, they give it shelter, they clothe it. And they feel good about this, and they should, because this is good work, and again, it's really important work. And then the next day they're at the river, and there's another baby, and they do the same thing. And then the next day, and the next day, and here they have 5, 10, 15 babies coming down the river. And so one day, somebody in the community said, let's go upriver, right? Let's go upriver and find out what's up there. And that takes a long time to get upriver. So they prepare, it's a week-long trip going up there. And we call upriver the jungle. And it's a scary place. There's lions, there's tigers and bears. You can get eaten alive in the jungle, right? But they know as a community, if they go together, if they collaborate, and they bring as many people at the table as that they can bring, they're going to win. And so how can we in Johnson County come together as a community and go upriver and go into that jungle and win? I think we can do it, and I think we as a community can set the example, hopefully, so other communities can also be inspired. So.
Thank you, Emily. Great story. Thank you so much for that. I want to say to our panelists, thank you all for your tireless work, for your insight, and especially for your heart. For all of you, what we've heard tonight isn't just information, it's a true call to action. A reminder that when we center humanity, compassion, and justice, our communities always grow stronger. And I think now you have time for some questions.
I do, because I don't have anything else to add. Really exceptional conversation tonight. Thank you all so very much. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
First of all, I have a question for Isaac. So you have Know Your Rights, and your going into the community and trying to educate people. So where are you doing it, and who are you doing it for, and like how many people have you had show up?
So I think I've personally led, I think four or five presentations over the course of the last 6 months. We've done a lot with free medical clinics that work in the area. We've also we hosted a conversation with the Community Foundation for Johnson County just recently.
Over Zoom. We do a lot of this work over Zoom.
I have no objections to doing it on Zoom. But really, we do it for whoever asks. Center for Worker Justice. Like we'll do it for anyone who asks, and we try to tailor it to the place that we're doing it, and we try to make it so that it's useful for the people who are there to listen.
Well, I could speak to our experience.
Yeah, sure.
So, Community Foundation of Johnson County engaged with the clinic to host a Zoom webinar for our nonprofit partners. So, anyone who had any nonprofit organization that worked with immigrants or refugees, or just wanted to learn more about the situation regarding, what does it look like if ICE representatives come? They do a great job of just laying out what's the difference between a warrant versus another type of document. Very black and white, just to understand the situation. Our nonprofit community found it very helpful because it helped tailor policies and procedures for the specific organizations, how their organization would handle a visit should it happen. So that was our personal experience.
I will say our faculty advisor, Bram Elias, at this very moment is giving a Know Your Rights talk to some of the graduate student migrant community at the University of Iowa right now. Mm-hmm. So we do it with whoever asks.
So you're sounding more like it was for community
leaders,
not necessarily the immigrants who.
Yeah. It was for nonprofit organizations that are immigrant serving organizations, so helping to make that connection. But everyone hearing this, if there's an opportunity, we could make a connection for you to the clinic as well. Please let us know. Yes.
I feel like I must address the part of your question, because at the Center for Worker Justice we do all of it, and as Isaac said, it is always tailored since the roles are different. So what you expect for the members to give them as knowledge as far as protection and stuff will be different from what you wanna, like the citizens or the people who can provide the support and protection. What is your right as a citizen on if you are passing by and found yourself in the middle of like an ICE situation? What is it, your legal right, and what is it that you can do, your action and stuff? So in short, it's just like different things. The legal clinic really do a good job of putting it out for people.
Yes.
This is, I think, kind of related. So there's a wallet card size, and then also something that you post on, you suggest for an immigrant person to post it on the inside of their home that explains a lot of these rights. I received it in English and in Spanish and attempted to translate it into some other languages, but I'm getting a little bit of pushback. My question is do any of you have those forms, and do any of you have them in more than just Spanish? Okay, I need to talk to whomever I can get some.
The red cards are available in lots of languages, but I would just caution us, they're important, and it's really important to have this red card, but when you're in a car and you're being pulled over by any official or any immigrant, the red card is the last on your mind. And so simulation practice with people can be really helpful, just having a card, because, when you're in the moment, it's hard not to give that ID or say something because you are just so desperate to get out of that situation. So again, the red cards I think are important. We also hand them out. But I think we need to take it a step further and think about some simulation with our community and immigrants.
I have a question for Sunday or anyone on the panel. So you talked about collaboration and organizations working together and talking, getting together. But what do you see beyond talk? Like, what do you see as a concrete, like, how do you envision that actually happening? Because I think that a lot of us are learning and, learning about each other's organizations. I really appreciate that. But what exactly do you mean, or what ideas do people have?
So collaboration could be many things. It could either just be coming down, sitting down, sharing ideas, telling you what I do, and you knowing what I do. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We do that a lot in Refugee Alliance, where all service providers, non-profit organizations come together every month and have discussions. And that is what we've been talking about with Peter. Beyond that, what do we do? What's the relevance of all of that? But we've given very practical examples of how that can help here. Because if I know what he is doing, and I think that, for example, they have sent us information about an advocacy case that they need to work on, and asked if we could sign on it. So that it goes beyond just, it goes into, I think what you're saying is, what is the action you will take? Now, the action is actually going to depend on situations that are taking place at a time. One of the things I have really realized is how much this community has come together during this period and having discussions. But I think the relevance of your question is, how do we move further from just discussing? And different organizations have different goals and different objectives. IC Compassion provides services for people. Center for Worker Justice is a lot more advocacy in terms of how they function. And it is, so the collaboration between us and Center for Worker Justice is, supposing they have somebody who needs an immigration case, which we have done, they send them to us. There's somebody who has an immigration case, we want you to help him file the immigration papers. We file the immigration papers. If there's somebody who comes to us and we know that this is somebody who really needs an organization that it's more advocacy oriented, we send this person to Center for Worker and say, this person has a work case problem that needs to be handled. We can't handle that. Can you help this person handle that case? I think that is what I was actually talking about. Identifying what each of us does, what each of our strengths are, and then refer people. References are also very important. So we refer people to each other when cases come up. And maybe somebody here has more to say about the action part.
I really have. We've been that Sunday. Maybe you are not seeing it, but we refer all the people who need something. We reach out to Tracy, and we make appointment online for people. We help them pay for it and make appointment for them to come to your services. I work with the Center for Worker Justice all the time. They share my event with their network. I send them an email, I say, you have a lot of people in your network. And I think Peter know that too, because he would receive our event through the Center for Worker Justice, because, for example, we are having only 200 people in our network. Center for Worker Justice have a lot. Same thing, Center for Worker Justice will send us something. And we refer people to the shelter house because we know shelter house have refugee housing, community crisis center, open heartland, or my newcomer during the winters, they come and they get the quote from you. We've been working together. We've been referring people together, but maybe we're not sure. We did not come to the alliance. You said the Refugees Alliance. We never been invited to come to those. Let us be clear. But we working as a community. We work together, and I don't know why all the people they say refugees and immigrants they are not working together. We do, but what's the difference between shelter house, community crisis center, DBIB, and housing into home, all those organizations led by white people, but they serve immigrants, low income, they serve everyone, but they have different mission. The mission that we need it in the community, unique services that we need it in the community, and the same thing as the immigrants organization. We have unique services. My organization provides housing. IMAN is advocacy and changing policy, and instead of giving people charity, ask why the people need to have that. If somebody they don't have a shoes, they address that. Why instead of giving the people shoes, we have to answer the question why people don't have shoes. This is the advocacy. IC convention, amazing. All the, instead of the people go to lawyer and paying all this money to file citizenship application, IC convention can do it for $40. All these services is unique, needed in the community. That's why I don't know why somebody is not seeing that as cooperation. We do cooperate. We do like sending people to, if the cooperation means sending people, even, I like everyone else that have housing into home. They furnish all the house. When my people transfer to their own home, I register them with housing into home. So they get that. We work together. That's what I want to emphasize.
I think there's a misconception of what I said earlier, Mazahir. I don't want us to go into that area, but I think that my emphasis was if we're going to grow stronger, there's more to what you have said, and I'm probably that's something that we need to sit down and talk about among ourselves.
Yeah, I think again to answer the question in a more specific way, I would like to share that we at the Center for Local Justice launched since February, beginning of February, what we call the Immigrant Resource Network. That's a group of citizens that we called in. They came in, and then there were meetings. Many of the friends here attended those meetings, and they come up as like in a form of 4 groups. Those groups are really tasked with specific things as we move forward. So those were rapid response group, and then humanitarian group, and education group, education and what was the last one? So rapid response, humanitarian, education, and media and messaging. So these groups, we are thinking of those are the opportunities for the people when they come in. When I talked about the local response to those problems, it is ideally all our community groups and resources are coming in and putting thoughts and efforts together so that when we build our local response, we can also extend that out. So this is an opportunity that is still going on, and you can learn more about this. And we hope for this to grow bigger and to bring not only individuals but also organizations. I mean, we are all together in this, and we should lead it in that way, just moving forward and pushing it forward.
Thank you so much for that additional context. This issue, like all the other ones that we have covered, they're very complex, and we are just scraping the surface. I mean, this is a 1.5-hour conversation about a very, very deep and complex issue. So this is a starting point. Your starting point is your engagement. Thank you so much for being here this evening. You've been able to be connected with some wonderful nonprofit organizations working in this space, and I encourage each of you on your own to learn more about all the amazing work that they're doing. Can we please have another round of applause?